Today, we're going to talk about foods from the Fertile Crescent. Where in the world was the Fertile Crescent? It was right about there. Hard to see on the big map. Let's switch to a more concise ancient world map. The key to civilization was when farmers began to create permanent settlements. They planted the first cereals, and this allowed them to accumulate surplus. With civilization came wealth based mainly on food and the separation of the elites, kings, religious leaders, generals, from everyone else. We'll call them peasants and slaves. Food surplus meant the elites could fund artisans, technocrats, and administrators. So let's look at the Fertile Crescent. Let's look at the mystery of the Fertile Crescent. Where and when did this happen? The Fertile Crescent was a near perfect spot. This included Egypt along the Nile, Canaan, later Phoenicia, included what is now Israel and Lebanon, and then Mesopotamia, which primarily was Syria and Iraq. To the east was Persia, Media, and Anatolia, Turkey, was to the northwest. Most of the cereal crops grew wild here, including wheat, barley, rye, and oats. These were harvested, ground, and cooked to create porridges and flatbreads, probably by 15,000 years ago. The earliest humans to harvest wheat were called Natafeans. The earliest Jericho site was Natafean. They figured out how to grind and cook wheat and other cereals. The first solid evidence of actual farming, planting, and maintaining crops through harvest was in Sumerian city-states in Mesopotamia, over here, roughly today's Iraq, over 10,000 years ago. This is the region between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The key reason for permanent settlements may have been beer. The role of beer seems particularly persuasive. It was safe to drink, kept a long time, was reasonably nutritious with obvious spiritual effects. The Sumerians created hundreds of varieties of beer. Barley works particularly well for beer. Onions were likely cultivated in the Fertile Crescent by 7,000 years ago. Close relatives are garlic, scallions, leeks, and chives. Other crops cultivated in the early Fertile Crescent included peas, lentils, fava, beans, cucumbers, and lettuce. Fruits included melons, apples, grapes, and figs. The Fertile Crescent is likely the origin of domesticated grapes some 6,000 to 8,000 years ago. The existence of yeast quickly led to wine, with the oldest known winery in 4000 BC. Most domesticated livestock were Eurasian, a huge area up here, with a separate story for each. The Fertile Crescent was in the ideal position to benefit. Dogs were domesticated from gray wolves somewhere in Asia. They were Fertile Crescent companions and occasionally food, long before civilization. Dogs are particularly good as herders and guardians of sheep, leading to the next domestication. Sheep probably evolved in Central Asia, but were domesticated in the Fertile Crescent for milk, wool, and meat. Wool would dominate textiles with developments in weaving and dyeing. Sheep herders can be nomadic, so the domestication likely was independent of settled agriculture. Cattle were domesticated in Mesopotamia. Over 10,000 years ago, cattle were particularly valuable for milk, hides, meat, and historically used as beasts of burden, how about that? Especially oxen for plowing. Pigs probably were domesticated in Mesopotamia even earlier than the cattle. Pigs proved to be effective meat producers, often able to forage for their own foods as well. Of course, civilizations started independently all over the world at later dates with different foods and histories. Other sites in the Old World are subject of our next video.